Jamaah has stressed the need to implement the resolution on the revitalization of the work of the General Assembly to boost the UN productivity and efficiency. And in Iraq, President Abdulatif Jamal Rashidi has called on all the parties to abstain from any recourse to force or threats in Kirkuk and stressed that he was following with great concern the situation in the northern region. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. Here in Algiers, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Lounes Magraman, today received the U.S. Deputy Secretary for North Africa, Joshua Harris, now on a visit here. During the meeting, the two men examined the means and prospects of supporting the UN's efforts aimed at reaching a political solution to the Western Sahara issue, including the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. They also examined the latest developments in the Sahara-Sahel region, notably in the light of the crisis besetting Niger. Their discussions also centered on the Algerian-US relations ahead of the meeting of the strategic dialogue between the two countries scheduled to take place in October in Washington. The permanent representative of Algeria to the United Nations, Ammar Ben Jamaah, has stressed the need to implement the resolution on the revitalization of the work of the General Assembly to boost the United Nations productivity and efficiency in the future. Mohamed Khatil tells us more.
In his capacity as coordinator of the non-aligned countries group, Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Ben Jamaah, made a speech to the UN General Assembly on behalf of the non-aligned countries group movement on the issue of relaunching the works of the General Assembly. Mr. Ben Jamaah stressed the need to implement the resolution on relaunching the works of the General Assembly so that the UN is more productive and efficient, recalling that the resolution adopted this year is the result of inclusive, transparent, and intense consultations. The permanent representative of Algeria also called for maintaining and strengthening the progress made in the process of selection and appointment of the Secretary General, while bearing in mind the need to ensure balance in terms of gender parity and geographic representation when it comes to selection and appointment of the best possible candidate for the position of Secretary General and other key positions in the United Nations.
And the Council of the Nation will open its 2023-2024 ordinary parliamentary session tomorrow, Monday. A press release from the Upper House of Parliament indicated that the opening of the session will be in accordance with the provisions of Article 138 of the Constitution and Article 5 of the Organic Law number 1612 of August 25, 2016, defining the organization and functioning of the National People's Assembly and the Council of the Nation, as well as the functional relations between the two chambers of Parliament and the government. And the President of Western Sahara, Secretary General of the Polisario Front, Brahim Ghali, has emphasized the need to allow the United Nations mission for referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, to fulfill its mandate and genuinely support the efforts of the UN Secretary General's personal envoy to Western Sahara. Mohamed Khatil again.
The Sahrawi president received a delegation from the United States led by Joshua Harris, Deputy Assistant Secretary for North Africa, with whom he discussed ways to support the efforts of the UN Secretary General's personal envoy for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura, in reviving the peace process which has been blocked due to the obstruction and obstinacy of the Moroccan occupier. For President Ghali, the success of Staffan de Mistura in his mission largely depends on the support he receives from the Security Council, particularly influential countries like the United States. He said to truly and effectively support the efforts of the personal envoy, stressing that the conditions must be created to allow MINURSO to fulfill the mandate entrusted to it by the Security Council in accordance with the UN-AU settlement plan of 1991. The Sahrawi people, he added, are not pro-war but are strongly committed to their inalienable rights and non-negotiable national aspirations for freedom and independence, which they will defend by all legitimate means guaranteed by the UN Charter and the Constitutive Act of the African Union. Let's recall that the American delegation had started a visit to the Sahrawi refugee camps on Friday as part of the efforts to revive the peace process sponsored by the United Nations in Western Sahara. On this occasion, the Polisario Front reaffirmed its full and constructive cooperation with the efforts of the UN and the African Union to accelerate the process of decolonization in Western Sahara Sahara by enabling the Sahrawi people to exercise their inalienable right to self-determination and independence in accordance with the relevant resolution of the United Nations and the African Union.
14 hours 35 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And to Libya now. The UN envoy to Libya, Abdoulaye Batili, has affirmed that he agreed with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aguila Salah, during their meeting on the importance of conducting elections under a unified government supported by key stakeholders. The two officials discussed current political development in Libya and emphasized the urgency of expediting the legal framework for inclusive elections. And the Attorney General's office in Libya has announced the formation of an investigation committee to investigate the incident of the Foreign Minister Mangoush meeting with the Israeli Foreign Minister. Libya's Public Prosecutor's Office explained in a post on his official Facebook page that he had received notifications related to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the international cooperation's violation of the rules of boycotting Israel. Thus, the Public Prosecutor issued a decision to form an investigation committee. According to the post, the committee was assigned the task of investigating the extent of damage that befell the interests of the Libyan state based on the reports of their intelligence service and the evidence collected from the statements of those involved in the incident. And in Iraq, President Abdelatif Jamal Rashidi has called on all the parties to abstain from any recourse to force or threats in Kirkuk and stressed that he was following with great concern the situation in the northern region. He was quoted by the news agency INA as saying that he was determined to spare no efforts to restore peace in all parts of the country.
In this connection, the Iraqi president urged all the parties to make the country's interests prevail over all the other interests, stressing the importance of launching a constructive dialogue. This, he went on to say, would contribute to ease tension and safeguard the gains and achievements made by the Iraqi people in order to prevent terrorist groups to deal a blow to the country's stability. Meanwhile, the local authorities in Kirkuk announced the lifting of a curfew imposed in the wake of the killing of 4 people during rival demonstrations. The situation worsened during demonstrations staged on the one side by the town's Kurdish inhabitants and the Arab and Turkmen community on the other side. According to police, 15 other people were wounded during the incidents.
14 hours 38 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And the Palestinian Foreign Ministry has called on the international community to put genuine pressure on the Israeli occupation to force it to put a halt to its unilateral and illegal decisions. Mohammed Khatal.
In a communique released by the news agency Wafa, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry also urged the international community to stop the Jewish militias-related violence and to dismantle and dry up the financial resources of such terrorist groups. The Palestinian diplomacy requested that all the abuses and attacks carried out by the Jewish militias against the Palestinians, their properties and sacred places must stop. It recalled that the silence of the international community over the crimes perpetrated by the Israeli army-backed militias could but enhance Israel's occupation and segregation and encourage the Jewish settlers to carry on their crimes. Meanwhile, 1 Palestinian was today arrested by the Israeli soldiers in Ramallah in the West Bank. This came as the PLO officials stressed the importance of the forthcoming meeting of donor countries slated later this month in New York to mobilize the necessary means for the UN relief agency UNRWA. Addressing newsmen in Ramallah, he described the forthcoming meeting to be held outside the UN General Assembly as a major event, as it will contribute to raising funds necessary to the functioning of the UN agency.
14 hours 39 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And back to Africa now. In Sudan, 20 civilians, including 2 children, were killed in air raids carried out by the government forces against the residential district of Khartoum. According to a resistance committee, the raids targeted positions of the rapid support paramilitary in the district of Kalakala. This came as artillery fire could be heard in the northern suburbs of the capital. According to the UN, the 4-month-long conflict has claimed 5,000 lives and caused the displacement of 4.8 million people. The UN fears the fighting and hunger could plunge the region into a humanitarian catastrophe, while stressing that only 1/4 of the financing or the promises have been fulfilled, undermining thus the funneling of humanitarian aid. To Mali now, a 12-year-old child has been killed in central Mali in a terrorist attack with heavy weapons against a transport boat on the Niger River. The Malian River Navigation Company said that the assault was carried out by terrorist armed groups who used rockets against a boat of the Malian River Navigation Company in the Yuwaro area in the Mopti region. The ship was coming from Mopti and was heading to the locality of Kabara in the northern region of Timbuktu on the Niger River. A 12-year-old passenger was killed and 2 other people, including a member of the crew, were injured in the attack, which caused significant damage to the ship. Since 2012, Mali has been beset by terrorist attacks and intercommunal violence that have left thousands of people dead and hundreds of thousands displaced. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and at least 7 people have been killed in an attack perpetrated by gang bandits against worshippers in a mosque at Sayasaya village in Ikara local government of Nigeria's Kaduna state. According to local sources, the attackers gunned down 5 of the victims in the mosque, while the other 2 victims were killed at different locations within the area. The bandits carried out their attack in the evening as the villagers were observing the evening or Isha prayer at a local mosque in the community. A resident of the village said 2 other villagers sustained gunshot wounds and were rushed to the hospital for treatment. Also confirming the incident, the village had disclosed that one of the victims killed inside the mosque was the head of the village's vigilance group. The village had also said security agencies comprising soldiers and police officers from Ikara town and Palgur area arrived at the scene in the early hours of Saturday, but the bandits had already left the village before then. He added that security personnel had been immobilized to nearby bushes to chase down the perpetrators. And Ukraine has claimed having shot down 22 Russian drones in the region of Odessa. The Ukrainian Air Force said today that Russian forces launched an overnight attack on the southwestern Odessa region that lasted more than 3 hours. It said that 22 of the 25 drones were shot down. At least 2 people were injured, and Danube River port infrastructure was hit in the attack, according to the Air Force. Russia has stepped up its attacks on Odessa and Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine after it halted a UN-brokered deal that allowed safe shipments from the Black Sea. The 2 Ukrainian regions are home to vital ports and infrastructure for grain shipment. And earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that 2 more vessels had passed through the temporary Black Sea grain corridor, which Ukraine is using to release cargo ships that have been trapped in its ports since Russia's invasion. 14 hours 44 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And U.S. diplomat Bill Richardson, who also served as governor of New Mexico and U.S. Energy Secretary, passed away on Friday at the age of 75. Bill Richardson was a veteran Democratic politician and former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, who later spent decades negotiating the release of Americans detained around the world. He also served as governor of New Mexico and the U.S. Energy Secretary. Richardson made his name as the Indiana Jones of U.S. diplomacy and was famed for daring head-to-head encounters with strongman leaders. 14 hours 45 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and time now for the headlines. The Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Lunas Magroman, today received the U.S. Deputy Secretary for North Africa, Joshua Harris. And the permanent representative of Algeria to the United Nations, Amar Benjama, has stressed the need to implement the resolution on the revitalization of the work of the General Assembly to boost the UN productivity and efficiency. And in Iraq, President Abdelatif Jamal Rashidi has called on all the parties to abstain from any recourse to force or threats in Kirkuk and stressed that he was following with great concern the situation in the northern region. 14 hours 46 minutes Algeria's time. You are listening to Radio Algeria International, and now I invite you to listen to this interview conducted by Jamal Salmani.
Hello, you're listening to the English service of Radio Algeria International. Today in our program, we introduce you to a prominent Algerian religious and military leader who led the Algerian people in resisting the then French colonial rule, the Emir Abdelkader. He built up a collection of Algerian tribesmen that for many years successfully held out against one of the most advanced armies in Europe. His consistent regard for what would now be called human rights, especially as regards his Christian opponents, drew widespread admiration, and a crucial intervention to save the Christian community of Damascus from a massacre in 1860 brought honors and awards from around the world. Emir Abdelkader was born near the town of Mascara here in Algeria in 1808 to a family of religious aristocracy. The Emir Abdelkader died in Damascus on the 26th of May, 1883, and was buried near the great Sufi Ibn Arabi in Damascus. His body was recovered in 1965 and is now in the El Alia Cemetery in Algiers. El Kader is a city in the United States which is named after him. Today, we take you to Iowa to talk about the El Kader Education Project. Joining us from El Kader City, let's talk with the El Kader Education Project co-founder and executive director, Kathy Grams. Ms. Grams, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's just a pleasure to visit with you about the Abdelkader Education Project.
Ms. Grams, would you introduce us to the El Kader Education Project, please?
It would be my pleasure. Well, actually, the Abdelkader Education Project is about changing hearts and minds, and we want to create better understandings between all people through the life story and values of Emir Abdelkader. So I'm going to call it AEP. So what is AEP? Well, it's actually a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's grown simply from telling the Abdelkader story to offering educational projects and tools and resources, as well as providing outreach from the classroom to the boardroom and beyond. So we simply started as telling the Abdelkader story. So I'd like to tell you a couple of examples of our educational tools and opportunities. So it started with the Abdelkader Global Leadership Prize essay contest at the high school and college levels. These are annual events, and we offer this across the United States and as well as in Iowa, of course. And to culminate the end of the essay contest, we have an annual AEP forum that commemorates Emir Abdelkader's life story as well as honors the essay award winners. And this is a very unique networking opportunity for all people. And then we also work with the Islamic Networks Group in San Jose, California, and they have written the curriculum called Emir Abdelkader, a Muslim Hero for Our Time. And this is actually a marvelous guide to learning and studying John Kaiser's book, Commander of the Faithful, The Life and Times of Emir Abdelkader. Now, we have created our own curriculum, and that's called Foundations of a Civil Society. and that is about cultural diversity and enrichment. It is about Abdul Qadir and those like him. We work with the Harvard Pluralism Project, and we have created the case study called Emir Abdul Qadir and Ethical Leadership. And there are 3 other case studies that have also been developed in support of this major case study. And then another opportunity that we've created is the Abdul Qadir Theater Project by T. Gregory Argall, and he did this for us. It's a series of 3 to 5 minute vignettes, and they're based on historical facts with intelligent humor. We do like to have different ways of learning, so having the theater project is one other way that students and others can learn about Abdul Qadir. And then as for outreach, we have a website, Facebook, and we also have news and notes that is delivered to people to be updated on what the Abdul Qadir Education Project is doing. So people can sign up in the right bottom corner of our website.
Perfect and amazing, all these things that you explained. And please, what are the principles of the Emir Abdul Qadir that you try to spread through your project?
Okay, well, first of all, I was going to tell you how this started. I did neglect to tell you that in 2008, John Kaiser called me to launch his book in El-Qadir, because El-Qadir is named after Emir Abdul Qadir. And so his book is Commander of the Faithful, The Life and Times of Emir Abdul Qadir, a Story of True Jihad. So this was the book that actually started my journey in telling the Abdul Qadir story with John. Okay, so what are the principles of the Emir that we want to spread? Well, this once world-famous warrior, scholar, statesman, and humanitarian actually gives us a powerful example of social justice and ethical leadership. And he exhibits through his life story universal values of moral courage, integrity, intellect, and compassion. So the Emir's life story in a nutshell demonstrates that although cultures have differences, they actually share fundamental humanistic values.
This is really perfect. It's really amazing. Ms. Grams, let me just ask you a question about, you said that the Abdul Qadir Education Project started a few years ago, right?
It started in 2008 with a simple essay contest. And as we told the Abdul Qadir story, more people wanted to know all the time. So we decided there is such rich material in John Kaiser's book, Commander of the Faithful. This is the first English language biography of Abdul Qadir that I had even been exposed to. I grew up in El-Qadir. El-Qadir is my hometown. Yet, it wasn't until 2008 that I knew the whole history of Emir Abdul Qadir.
Do other people join you in the project, new members?
We always welcome collaborators. We have created a large network across the United States as well as beyond. Yes, our network grows. So, for instance, the organizations I mentioned earlier where we built curriculum with them, we also work with the U.S. Marine Corps University, where we have established an essay contest there as well. I believe that is at the officer level. We work with many other colleges, universities, and organizations.
Ms. Grams, how does the life of the Emir Abdul Qadir influence American youth?
Well, okay, so people say, why should we study Abdul Qadir? Well, we believe, and I personally believe, that education is the key to more understanding and a more peaceful world for all people. Students need to learn to respect differences as our society becomes more diverse, and students are exposed to people from different backgrounds and cultures. So with the background of Emir Abdul Qadir's life story that touches hearts and minds, and he also connects cultures across centuries, we feel that students are more prepared for the larger global society when they learn about this universally relevant figure for today and study him.
Okay, this will lead me to my next question. Is the Abdul Qadir Education Project a means to fight against Islamophobia?
Probably the best way to answer that is to say that Abdul Qadir's Islam is universal. And his life story challenges anti-Muslim stereotypes, and it also offers an alternate humanistic value system to the intolerant worldview today. What we offer in the story of Emir Abdul Qadir can make a difference.
I said, who is financing the project?
The Abdul Qadir Education Project has been fortunate to find individuals and different corporate efforts and foundations who are interested in helping AEP to move forward. We seek sustainable funding, and we welcome all donations. We want to grow, as we have in the past 8 years. And in order to do that, we are ready to go to the next level of impact. As our outreach grows, there's more demand on our time and our resources. We continue to build programs, and we continue to do outreach. When that happens, we need to grow the people who can work with us to offer these services and to help build the programs. So funding is very, very necessary for us to move forward.
Ms. Grams, are you planning to promote the Al Qadir Education Project in other American cities or also in abroad?
Yes, we are. We are planning to continue to promote the AEP in other cities in the United States and abroad. In fact, we are planning our next AEP forum, the Abdul Qadir Education Project Forum, for 2018 to be held in Washington, D.C. We want to bring it to a wider audience, but yet Al Qadir will always be in the mix.
Thank you so much, Al Qadir Education Project co-founder and executive director Kathy Grams. Thank you so much for answering our questions.
Oh, I have one more thing I wanted to add, if you could add this in.
Okay.
It is definitely the intent of the Abdul Qadir Education Project to continue to reach out to our Algerian friends and our colleagues. Many professors and others have reached out to AEP, and they want to be a part of what we're doing. We need to bring great minds together to develop how we are going to do that. Yes, we would like to offer our essay contest in Algeria and other countries as well. Mm-hmm. So it is our hope to continue to broaden our efforts.
Okay, Ms. Kathy Grams, it was really an honor for us to have you, your Al Qadir Education Project co-founder and executive director. Thank you.
Thank you very much for offering me this opportunity to tell about your Algerian hero.
And that was an interview conducted by Jamal Salmani with Executive Director of Al Qadir Education Project that tells about Emir Abdul Qadir's achievements and legitimate fight. And we'll meet you again tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Algiers time for our full news edition. Goodbye.
إذاعة الجزائر الدولية.
يمكنكم متابعة إذاعة الجزائر الدولية عبر الأقمار الصناعية. بالنسبة